So economist and journalist Robert Kuttner joining us from Boston. He's the co-founder and co-editor of the American Prospect, a distinguished senior fellow at the think tank Demos. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Robert Kuttner, let us start with you. First of all, explain how these bonuses happened. How did the president, the Treasury Secretary not know about them? What could have been done to prevent them before?
Well, I think you have to look at the bigger picture. Secretary Geithner is in bed with the wrong people in his entire approach to all of the financial rescues. And in this case, there's a three-member board comprised of financial industry people who are supposedly overseeing AIG as the agents of the U.S. taxpayer, and we own 80% of AIG. This crowd is incredibly indulgent of AIG's behavior. It's very clubby. And if you had a different Treasury Secretary with a different mentality, they would have said going in, we're the owners, you can't do this. And the rationales that have been put forward are the most appalling thing. Number one, the rationale that a contract is a contract. The UAW workers are giving up not just wages in their contracts, but retirees who have contractual guarantees to health insurance and pension benefits. Same thing happened in steel industry. If we go forward with a mortgage restructuring, mortgages are contracts, they're going to be restructured. The idea that you can tell the head of AIG to not pay those bonuses is just preposterous. I mean, you could say to these executives, if you want your job, you should voluntarily forfeit these bonuses. End of conversation. And I think the political problem here is that Obama has appointed a team that is part of the same club. There's no distinction between the Geithner plan and the Paulson plan before it, even though these supposedly are very different administrations. Now he's really behind the curve politically. And the Republicans, of all people, Mitch McConnell and Boehner, are sounding more populist than the Democrats. So unless the administration gets out ahead of this, it's going to be on the wrong side substantively because there is this popular outrage, and its plan is very likely to fail, and it's not going to get the cooperation of either party in Congress in solving the larger mess of which AIG is a part. So this is very, very useful as a symbol of the wrong-headedness of the entire approach.
Ralph Nader, your response to the whole thing.
Well, what's going on, obviously, is that the government has put in $170 billion and another $30 billion on the way in a giant financial conglomerate globally that has just put out a PowerPoint presentation in 21 pages that shows how it's not only too big to fail, but it says if it fails, it would cause catastrophe of unforeseen consequences all over the world in the U.S. economy and global markets. And now the government really is not in control of AIG. They have several corporate trustees in charge. They don't really know what's going on. And the very idea that these complex derivatives in the trillions of dollars out of AIG's financial products office, where the bonuses were especially concentrated, are too complex to unravel without keeping the culprits in their job, illustrates the powerlessness, the indentured powerlessness of the U.S. government. I mean, what's important, Amy, to point out here is that there are very few deterrent policies and preventive policies coming out of the Obama administration. They have very, very few resources for prosecutors and investigators in the Justice Department, number one. Number two, they are not talking about shifting power to the taxpayers and the investors who would have stopped all this shenanigans if they were at least organized. And above all, they're not talking how to pay for this by a Wall Street derivative transaction tax, which would raise about $500 billion with a 0.1% sales tax on $500 trillion or so of derivative transactions last year alone. I mean, people in state after today, as we speak, are going into stores and buying things they need and paying 5, 6, 7% sales tax. But today, someone can buy $100 billion or $100 million of Exxon derivatives in Wall Street and pay not a dime in sales tax. So I want people to read this remarkable document by AIG called AIG is the Risk Systemic. In other words, we are too big to fail. We can collapse the global economy. That is up on the website wallstreetwatch.org, wallstreetwatch.org. And if you want to see a taxpayer movement get underway, go to wallstreetwatch.org and join our email list. How many times yesterday did all these politicians talk about taxpayers at risk, taxpayers having to pay, and they won't give taxpayers any facilities to organize a political force to take this public fury that they keep talking about and move it from a burst of revulsion by tens of millions of people into a political force in Washington.
We're going to break and then come back to Robert Kuttner and Ralph Nader. Robert Kuttner, co-founder and